shopping at our local Leijers for groceries in the fall of 2022. Upon wandering into the live pet aisle, we were greeted with an alarming scene. In the black moor fish tank, all but one fish had passed away and were floating at the surface of the tank. The last remaining black moor looked visibly distressed and unwell, and we rushed to inform an employee. The employee's response was to tell us to never buy fish from their Leijers, as they almost always died. I began to immediately calculate how many fish supplies I could afford to buy to save the last living fish, but after returning the next day to purchase him, the fish had also passed away. I began to research more and learn just how vast the amount of care and knowledge each species needs to thrive really is. As I researched, the aquatic world of pet fish opened up to me, as did my grief and frustration at the deaths I had seen. A year passed, and I kept thinking about those fish. When I would visit that Leijers and check in on the fish, they were always fish in distress or fish that had passed away in the tanks. Why was this acceptable? Why were all of these fish disposable? Why didn't someone do something about it if it kept happening? There are 269 Leijers in the United States, and they all offer live fish for sale. I was not the first person to become angry at the level of neglect these animals were facing. There have been multiple petitions online to ask them to stop selling their live fish. People sharing bad reviews and videos, and statements from PETA asking them to stop. In 2019, Walmart stopped selling their live fish due to similar horrific circumstances, and I wanted Leijers to do the same thing. But first, I had to make sure that what I witnessed wasn't a one-time instance. I chose 3 Leijers locations to observe for 2 months. Once a week, from August to September of 2023, I would visit each location and document the condition of the fish there. I logged each species, the number in each tank, how many were ill, and how many had died. By doing this, I could track a pattern of mistreatment and see just how bad the conditions truly were. I was sadly never able to visit any of these 3 stores without finding at least one fish that had passed away. A common occurrence was seeing an ick outbreak, also known as white spot disease, spread across multiple tanks. When I would mention that there were dead fish in the tanks, staff members would tell me they would remove the dead fish. However, this never addressed the cause of the problem. Hundreds of fish were being held in such poor conditions that weekly deaths were occurring. Once, after complaining about how many fish had died, I was told that, well, fish die, just like in the wild, but the sheer number that were dying in their store was not even close to the natural lifespan of these species. Betta fish have a lifespan of 2 to 5 years, not weeks, and comet goldfish can live up to 15 to 20 years when taken care of. That comment was told to me at Store 1 Leijers location, the worst of the 3, and the reason the stores have earned their name, Leijers. It was also the first Leijers I had seen with the black moor catastrophe from the previous year. To protect sensitive viewers, I will not include any photos or footage of the fish in this edit that were harmed or lost, but I will share the results of my findings with you. For those of you who cannot hear the numbers of the fish lost, please fast forward to the timestamp below to find out what happened after my report was submitted to the company. I must note I also only recorded what I witnessed on location, and these figures do not include possible fish sales, fish deaths during the remainder of the week where I was not in attendance, and fish deaths after purchase. My final counts are only what I saw in person in each location. Store 1 was the worst store by far. I observed 1,532 fish in this store, with 274 being ill and 147 being dead, meaning that only an estimated 72% of the fish were healthy and alive during the observation time. At Store 2, I observed 3,503 fish, with 104 being ill and 135 being dead. And Store 3, which was the best out of the 3, I observed 6,446 fish, with 93 being ill and 69 being dead. Across the 3 Leijers, there were about 11,481 fish for sale, while only 10,659 were visibly healthy and alive. This means that only 93% of fish from these 3 locations will be healthy enough to become pets and go to forever homes. I submitted my observation logs with detailed accounts and photos to each Leijers location through their customer service page on their website. I paired this with Google reviews to ensure that more than one employee saw it. I also reached out to 5D Tropical, a listed supplier from Florida for the Leijers fish, in hoping that they would stop shipment and break their contract with Leijers. Anything to get corporate to wake up and see just how bad their treatment of animals is. I contacted PETA and informed them of the mistreatment that was happening, and their reply let me know that I was on the right track. They said, "It's important that you alert store corporate and urge them to stop selling fish. We've seen this work at several locations." I made sure that, when I did hear back from Leijers, I followed up with them and asked them to inform corporate of my concerns as well. Because the thing is, it's not only upsetting and unethical, it is illegal to hurt animals. All animals, including fish, have the right to be cared for by their distributors and owners. Animal cruelty is defined by a. No person shall 1. Torture an animal, deprive one of necessary sustenance, unnecessarily or cruelly beat, needlessly mutilate or kill, or impound or confine an animal without supplying it enduring such confinement with a sufficient quantity of good wholesome food and water. Caring for live fish requires the care of their entire environment, meaning their tank. When water quality is compromised, such as letting dead fish stay in the water for multiple days, or allowing algae, food, and feces to build up and cause the water to become discolored and odorific, it becomes extremely hazardous to the fish. This buildup of ammonia can cause stress, gill and internal organ damage, and eventually death. This treatment of fish in confinement is depriving them of a sufficient quality of good wholesome water and depriving them of necessary sustenance, meaning clean oxygen-filled water, proper food portions, and medicines to combat their diseases, such as white spot disease. If you were to visit a dog shelter, and every time you visited, you saw a dead dog, that shelter would be reported and immediately shut down. Why do people see fish differently? One fish is sad, some may say, but what about 351 fish? Because that's how many dead fish I counted across the 3 Leijers locations in just 2 months. If that pattern repeated exactly the same for a year, 2,106 fish would have died across those 3 locations. And if all 269 Leijers treat their fish the same way, then that means 187,434 fish have died in each year of national Leijers sales. This is how you create a monster of neglect. When you see something awful happen to an animal or person that is just bad enough for you to feel bad, but not bad enough for you to do something. And so that awful thing happens again and again. And soon folks just say that is how it's always been. Leijers sells their fish like they sell their products, and they treat them the same way, keeping the fish just well enough to, sometimes, survive their temporary home, but never putting in the effort to improve their care or treat their illnesses. There is no initiative to educate their customers or prepare them for proper fish care, and this is a horrible example of how fish are presented as an easy, disposable pet. After weeks of logging and submitting my report, I took a long break from my fish observations. The monster of neglect had proven too overwhelming and frightening, and I sought shelter far away so I could no longer see him. In May 2024, I visited all 3 Leijers to discover that they had actually stopped receiving betta fish shipments for a few months. I was so relieved to see my report had made some impact. I still filmed the remaining species, contacted the stores again, but this time I thanked them for stopping their betta fish sales and encouraged them to keep going, keep pushing towards stopping all of their live fish sales. Heartbreakingly, when I visited again in July, they had put betta fish back on the shelves, alongside their other neglected fish. I do take some comfort, though, in knowing that future Leijers stores are being built without fish tanks inside them, and hope that my words and continued reporting will eventually convince them that none of their stores really need fish at all. Success can rarely be achieved by one person, and so I would like to encourage you to take action whenever you can. I have narrowed down 3 big ways you can help after watching this video. Number 1. If you ever shop at a big box store that sells live animals, always check in on them. If they are being mistreated or neglected, let a staff member know. Leave a bad review with photos. and complain through their customer service lines. At every store I visited, I understood that the decision to sell live fish was never up to an individual team member or manager. The decision is a corporate one, and thus must be heard through a chain of communication. That chain can begin with you, so make your voice heard for the animals that cannot speak for themselves. If you have the privilege of choosing where to shop, please do not support stores that harm animals or people with your business. I understand many folks have limited options due to food deserts and accessibility to groceries, so only use this option if it is safe for you to do so. Number 2. If you are going to buy a pet fish for the first time, or are looking to add one to your aquarium, do not buy your fish from triers or other big box stores. Researching and learning about fish has never been easier or more accessible. I started by watching several YouTube videos and borrowing books from the library. I especially recommend AVNJ Fish Biologist. This creator has a fantastic series introducing ichthyology in a very understandable way. It helped me really understand some core questions like, what is a fish actually? And what role do fish play in an ecosystem? Girl Talks Fish covers tons of educational fish subjects and common questions when entering the fish keeping trade for the first time. I will link both of these creators in the description below for you to check out. Simply typing in how to take care of a beta, tetra, pleco fish into your search bar will provide you with endless sources of information and community support for you to learn. Another great phrase I recently learned was, adopt, don't shop, and I think this is a great policy for fish and all pets. Number 3. The last point is for everyone who eats seafood or buys seafood products. Hands down, the most impactful thing you can do to help fish worldwide and protect marine environments is to buy sustainable seafood. Sustainable seafood comes from fisheries that catch fish in ways that ensure the long-term health of a species and the well-being of the ocean. It's caught in a way that doesn't harm the environment and minimizes the impact on other species. It also ensures your seafood is not a product of slavery on the high seas, which is sadly very common. This subject is discussed more thoroughly in the incredible book, Emperors of the Deep, which I will link in the description, and I highly recommend you check it out. It's incredibly easy to find a sustainable seafood option at your local grocery store. Just look for the MSC label on seafood products, including canned tuna, frozen fish, or even cat food. Very often, these options are similarly priced to their harmful counterparts, and I hope they can become a frequent alternative to your usual purchases. The only thing corporations will listen to is our money and how we spend it, so whenever possible, please buy sustainable seafood. Just like how organic food impacts the soil and fair trade chocolate impacts our forests, buying sustainable seafood impacts our oceans in a major international way. I hope this project has given you a little hope for our future and shown you that sometimes the small, consistent actions are the ones that make a difference. With a little research, a little persistence, and a lot of prayer, 3 liars in the world stopped getting betta fish shipments for several months in a row. And that is the first time in a long time I've seen a corporation make a change for the better. Even though it was small, I'm hoping that they will take the right step to stop selling all live fish at their locations. Please let your local stores know when they need to do better and never stop fighting for the right thing. I'm still swimming, and I hope you are too.